I'm Randy Rohde, and I'm fascinated with entrepreneurs and small business owners. Plus, I love baseball. Every show, I sit down with a small business owner, and we discuss their running the bases of entrepreneurship. We throw the ball around on strategy, management, execution, and innovation. Plus, a little fun baseball talk. Hey, thanks for joining us today. Settle in, grab your Cracker Jacks, and you know what they say.
Play ball.
And it's a great day for a ball game. I'm Randy Rohde, and this is Running the Bases with Small Businesses. And today's guest has a history of knowing what the next top trend is going to be, and he is an expert in working a room to connect the right people together in support of entrepreneurs and their ideas. He is among the top leaders of the East Coast innovation ecosystem. For 20 plus years, he's helped nurture entrepreneurial innovation and technology in his home state of New Jersey, as well as up and down the East Coast. The entrepreneur gene runs deep in his family, and after receiving his MBA from Texas A&M, our guest entertained corporate positions, but found his calling leading the top-ranked Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center at Farley Dickinson University for 17 years. In 2008, he was recognized as one of New Jersey's 40 under 40 business achievers by the New Jersey Business Journal after his successful run leading the Entrepreneurship Center. He presided over the New Jersey Tech Council, where he led programs that drove connections, funding, and opportunities in New Jersey, New York, and Philadelphia for thousands of companies, both local and national. And in addition, I'll tell you, this intro goes on and on. He helped launch the $55 million Tech Council Ventures Fund. He has written articles for Entrepreneur, Business Insider, frequently speaks at regional and global conferences. He has appeared on MSNBC and ABC, as well as many local New Jersey networks. And in 2020, he founded Innovation Plus, where he is continuing cultivating the high-tech ecosystem by engaging the academic and corporate communities, advising companies, and helping startups get funded, grow, and scale. So please welcome to the show, Jim Barrood. Hey, Jim, welcome. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Randy. It's really a pleasure to be here.
My gosh, I have a great research team that do an incredible job of pulling content information in preparation for our shows. I will have to tell you, I think that is one of the longest intros that we have
I am
had.
humbled and embarrassed by it.
Wow.
Because it's so long.
Good for you.
You are right. Your research team is very, very, very good.
I'll tell you what, that is really pretty impressive. So there's so many things, I want to get in and really talk with you about so many of the things you've done with entrepreneurs. But so you've worked with entrepreneurs for 20 plus years. Over the course of those years, have you seen any kind of trend, whether it's in characteristics of the entrepreneurs or projects that they're bringing to the table?
Well, I would say today's entrepreneur is far more knowledgeable than past entrepreneurs because, as you know, different from when we were growing up or in college, the world is at the fingertips, right? So, and there's Shark Tank, which my kids love. I have tween girls, and all that education is good. So they have more knowledge about what entrepreneurship is and what entrepreneurs are. And so that's a good starting point. Now, sometimes it gets a little nutty because they think they're going to be the next unicorn and it's easy as overnight success. And that's sort of the downside of all this celebrity entrepreneurship and all this iconization of entrepreneurs, particularly in our country, but more broadly around the world. So the level of knowledge is higher these days. So that's really good. And obviously, most people can start a business in their bedroom, right? It used to be the garage. Now it's the bedroom. And now the cost of starting a business is 1/100th of what it used to be because you could do everything at your fingertips, share hosting services on a website, get some cheaper labor around the world through Upwork or Fiverr, right? So now there's really a golden era of entrepreneurship. And so that's really exciting because in the past few years, Randy, as you've seen the statistics, we were going down, down, down in entrepreneurship. But this pandemic, one of the silver linings is that people became more entrepreneurial, some by default, some because they were just tired of their job and wanted to do a side hustle or do something else. So it's, in many ways, it's really exciting time. So that's a long answer to your short question.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. And you mentioned something that I think is really is an interesting thread to kind of pull on a little bit, which is you kind of talked about, the barriers of entry in almost any field, aside from, something that you need to go to school for years, a doctor, as an example, an attorney. But the barriers to entry to entrepreneurship is significantly lower, whether it could be manufacturing. You want to come to market with a product that you can outsource to offshore somewhere, right? And bring it in. You could set up, and I've had clients and we've done it. You could set up an e-com site and do drop shipping products. Give me a couple of hours, we could have a whole business set up. It is amazing how quick and easy if you have somewhat of a knowledge, but I always tell my kids, you go spend 30 minutes on YouTube and learn just about anything. And so, to your point, knowledge is at your fingertips. And I just find that so amazing. Have you worked with entrepreneurs where they are kind of navigating that really remote world to their benefit and growth of their business? Do you operate in that field as well?
Absolutely. Well, the pandemic changed everything, right? And so, in fact, I just did a TED Talk on this, how the startup ecosystem is moving to the cloud, right? And so entrepreneurs could be digital nomads, right? And their talent could be digital nomads, right? So you're really working with distant teams, right? Or distant talent. And so the opportunity is you could run anything from anywhere and scale anything from anywhere very efficiently. The challenge is people can work anywhere and you need to provide the attraction and the incentives and the leadership to attract and retain that talent, particularly for that core team, which is so important for any startup. And doing all this digitally and remotely, kind of hard, right? Unless you build those skills and build a culture digitally or virtually, which is all possible, but it is a mindset change where people need to, particularly for older folks, right? Younger people are digital natives. Older folks are used to in-person contact. And so you need to think about that and learn those skills and adapt. We just have to be more agile than ever. But if we can take advantage of abundant opportunities because anything is possible these days. And things, as I said, are much more inexpensive when you can tap talent from around the world.
Yeah. You kind of hit on a whole nother topic, which I've had a lot of guests come on. We've talked about remote work and managing, actually not as much about managing teams. And you really kind of hit on the idea about connecting, being a leader when you have remote work and when you have talent that may be to far-flung corners of the world, and as well, just even being an entrepreneur and maybe being a bit of a nomad yourself, right? I might be in Cleveland today, and I don't know, a month from now, I might decide to go over to Paris and work for a number of weeks. But certainly managing a team in an entrepreneurial in a virtual kind of environment or a virtual company, so to speak, or as you say, a company in the cloud. Do you have some ideas, some thoughts about, how to be effective at doing that?
Well, sure. There's many tools out there. You need to become comfortable with the tools that will be most effective for your business or your organization. And that will vary. Some people like Slack, some people don't. Some people like Zoom, some people don't, right? You're going to need to use some type of virtual platform and a communication platform that works, right? And so there's various possibilities. The key, though, is to have everyone on board and everyone aligned, right? So that they are paying attention because everyone is overloaded with information. And you want to make sure that your messages as the leader get through, right? And sometimes that means different forms of communication for different people. That's unwieldy, but it may be the case. So a board member, you want to have a conversation on the phone because that person is maybe older, feels more comfortable on the phone rather than talking on the screen or Slack. Your 20-year-old developer halfway around the world likes to work with Slack or message or some type of texting, whatever. So you need to meet people where they are. So that's important. And I guess in general, over communication is sort of an important way or approach, right? You can never communicate too much because invariably there will be gaps in the messaging. So there's some repetition, but you need to get used to it and just realize that that is really essential.
Right, right. We are one of those companies. We have an office overseas. We've got employees in many different countries, as a matter of fact, and plus we have clients in many different countries. And one of the things you talk about communication, right? You mentioned, you got Slack, you have Zoom. That probably is my biggest, I don't say challenge, but it's like, oh my gosh, I have clients as an example. We have clients all over the world. I have some clients that only want to talk on Skype. I have some clients that only want to talk in Slack. I have some clients that only do WhatsApp, right? I have a staff that we talk via Messenger or text, or we use another product, ClickUp that we communicate through. It is all of these different platforms of communication. Like I'm getting a message one way or another, a different ding here and there. As the leader of, I wish there was just one great centralized hub that just like consolidated all of that stuff. So I didn't have to have like 8 tabs open on my computer to be able to talk to folks. But that is a challenge, I think, in the nomad world right now, or that virtual cloud standpoint. I know in the past and on other podcasts and on things that you reference, you talk about connecting with people. You do that well. That's part of kind of your special superpower, I think, about connecting entrepreneurs and those people who want to support them. And I think somebody attributed this to you, that you thoughtfully bringing people together. What does that mean to you, I guess? And how do you do that in this kind of virtual, company cloud environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's I don't know who said that, but that was very kind. So I built up a large network over the past 25 years. So that's a good starting point, right? On the other hand, anyone could do what I do. It just takes a little bit of thought and planning, right? And so what I've done during the pandemic is, so I used to bring people together in person, right? Before the pandemic, for most of my career, as a way to stay connected to folks, I just said, why don't we bring people together on Zoom? So I would call them salons, right? And some would just be ad hoc, around the topic, and just really small, right? 6 to 12 people, mostly 6 to 9 people, right? Just so it's easy and you can connect. You can have a quick discussion, half hour, and then you could introduce new people to one another, right? So real quick, people are busy, fatigued by Zoom, but bring people. Now that takes a lot of curation, right? So I try to bring different folks from different strokes together in those Zoom salon meetings. So I've done about 130 of those in the past 2 years.
Wow.
And so for me, it was very rewarding. And for the people who were part of it, it was very delightful and rewarding, and they met new people, and it was fun, right? I also had sort of verticals because, again, I've been dealing with vertical CEO, CFO, CIO, innovation leader, investor, blah, 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 blah. And so that was fun, too, to have specific verticals coming together, right? Because those folks sometimes want to stick together and they have problems, which they want to hear answers to, or just commiserate.
Right.
So when we say thoughtfully curate, whether it's in person or Zoom or other, it's about bringing people you think will bring contrasting opinions and contrasting perspectives, young, old, educated, non-educated. I'm mostly educated, but different types of education, right? And want to learn from each other. And then you moderate, right? You moderate it, you facilitate it. And, 99% of the time it went super well. And maybe 1% of the time, I might have had to cut someone off and sort of mollify things a little bit through some comments, or cut someone off because they're just talking too long. So it works, but it takes time to do that. But anyone could do that. I mean, it's really, even if you have a zero network, you can build a network by bringing people together, one step at a time. So it's possible. It just takes some thought. And there's books on this too. There's a great book called The Art of the Gathering. That's mostly for in-person, but you can do those techniques, online as well. So there are resources out there to give you better knowledge, right, on how to do this. But those skills, I think, are important for people in general, because it's what separates us from the robots, right? Is that sort of ability to curate and bring people together and really sort of delight them in some way, or inform them and delight them, which is the best of both worlds.
Yeah. 130 of those. That's quite an effort. Have you ever heard of that platform called Clubhouse? I don't know if you've ever participated. I'm not even sure. I kind of hung out on there for about 6 months, and I haven't been on there probably for a year now. So I'm not even sure what the status of Clubhouse is. It used to be like, oh, this is going to be such a great thing. But kind of what you were describing was like, well, that's kind of what Clubhouse was trying to do. But
no, absolutely. And I think I've sat in on a few of those. I never really got, I only had so much bandwidth. Right?
Yeah.
So I think that was sort of the issue I had, but people have been successful with it. But that's more of a larger,
right.
There's some interaction, but it's not intimate.
Yes. Yeah. I really like what your approach to it would be. Really a nice way to like gather people together and really share, I think, and really.
Yeah. I'll invite you to one.
Yeah. Oh man, I'd love that. So you've been doing 20 plus years working with entrepreneurs and innovation and all of this stuff. And then at some point, in 2020, you said, hey, I'm going to kind of create my own company here around this, Innovation Plus. Tell us about Innovation Plus and what led you to decide to start your own business.
Sure. So I think a lot of that had to do with the pandemic, actually. I mean, I was getting calls from people to lead organizations, and I had done all that, right? So I wanted to try something a little different and have flexibility, right? And so this was the most elegant way to do that, right? To do the things I like, right? Which is nurture the community, connect a lot of dots, help people, right? And then I could advise companies and consult and do collaborations to, pay the bills. So I had this luxury of being able to do both. And I realized, and my advisors, my mentors, and my friends said, Jim, why would you take a full-time job when you can do something you love and pay the bills and have balance, particularly when my family needed my attention, right? Whether it was my kids or my 93-year-old mother needed attention. So that was so it just came together. I was already doing a lot of this stuff, and I just put a name on it. And we've done a lot of good work. I'm really proud of what we've done and will continue to do in helping support the community.
That's great. So innovationplus.us. You can go online and check out what Jim has got going on his fun new organization. So you've done a lot of TED Talks, TEDx Talks. You got a lot of stuff going on. Do you have any particular talk that you love giving, or a particular, maybe a point that is like, man, if everybody listens to my stuff, they just like grasp onto this one particular idea, I'm going to feel great?
Sure. Well, let me give one example from each of my 2 TED Talks. So the first is, I'll go back to the one which I mentioned when startup ecosystems move to the cloud, right? So agility is critically important for all stakeholders in a community, right? So whether you're an entrepreneur, you need to be really agile. Whether you're an investor, you need to be really agile, because there's so much more competition for money coming in from around the world. If you are a corporate, you need to be agile because your workforce is now remote, but you need to support the local community and get talent. So you need to engage the ecosystem, but you need to engage ecosystems around the world now, and you could do that more elegantly. If you are a university, you need to be really agile and know how to work remote and meet your students where they're at, because they're going to demand remote for some classes. On the other hand, you can engage your alumni more effectively remotely, right? So there's opportunities there to bring your community back. And then governments need to be really smart, right? Because now when you can live anywhere, you're not going to live in a high tax, highly bureaucratic area, right? So government, state, local need to be much more progressive and innovative and need to raise the quality of living and ease of use, user friendliness to compete effectively in this new digital economy. So that's a bunch of points from the first talk. But I think it was important to note each of those stakeholders so the audience could get a sense for what agility means.
Right.
In this digital era we're in. And then the other talk I gave was about the importance of immigrants and innovation. The wonderful vaccines which help save the world, right, which are helping to get us out of this pandemic, were led or invented mostly by immigrants, right, in the biotech industry, which is one third of the workforce are immigrants or the kids of immigrants, right? So that's the point on that one, right? We should embrace the immigrant. We need immigrants more than ever, frankly. We don't have enough people to do. That's why there are labor shortages. We need more immigrants than ever before because we're not going to be able to survive when we get older. No more Social Security. And in fact, the strength of our economy is through diverse teams, diverse populations that come from around the world to help us. And so we can't overstate the importance of immigrants to our thriving and future robust economy and society.
Yeah. Well, we definitely need more people helping to drive the productivity of the country and the economy as a whole, and just worldwide. I mean, is creating opportunities for people around the planet actually is good. All right, good stuff. I'm going to have to, we'll put links to your TED Talks in the show notes as well, because I think I want to, I briefly listened to one last night. I'm like, I've got to listen to the whole thing and that'll be good. All right. So Jim, do you like baseball?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Well, it's that time.
And it's time for the 7th inning stretch.
All right, Jim, time for the 7th inning stretch. So, this is where I get to ask you some fun baseball trivia question, kind of around your niche. And I thought because you've done so much work in innovation and technology and kind of fun stuff like that, we'd probably expand then and ask you a question around MLB and innovation, specifically the NFT marketplace. Do you dabble much in NFTs?
I'm part of an advisory firm which deals in Web3, NFT, and crypto. So
well, yes, there you go. Wow,
a little familiar. Don't
yes.
I'm not an expert.
Okay. Well, MLB kind of launched a marketplace. I don't know if you're aware of that. Not too long ago, actually, earlier this year, the marketplace went live and they recorded $1 million in sales in the first 8 hours, which is incredible, I think, of transactions. So NFTs, these digital collectibles, all of this fun stuff is all over the place now. So your question specifically then is, what is the most expensive MLB NFT? NFT, non-fungible token. Do you have an idea? Now, this is as of May of this year. So it very well could have gone up or down, actually, even considering where the crypto market has gone over the last few months. But the most expensive, at least as of May of this year.
Was it a modern player or a non-modern player?
I will give you that. It is a modern player.
Just Aaron Justice card. How's that?
All right. Well, that's, it's a good stab. It was a swing and a miss, but the MLB champions, Brett Gardner, from the Yankees. All right. And so he's a center fielder for the Yankees. This is kind of an interesting thing because of this marketplace and how they kind of operate this thing. So they have this blockchain based simulated baseball game. And then, so as his stats and the more that he plays in a real game, so similar to kind of like fantasy baseball and things like that, but the more that he does that and the more that his stats go up, the more valuable then his virtual figure becomes. And as of May of this year, the NFT of Brett Gardner was $21.28 million.
Holy cow.
How about that? Yeah, that is crazy. That is crazy baseball money right there. Wow.
That is crazy. And I think the future is bright for sports related NFTs. And that's where there's a lot of traction and there's a lot of relevance and staying power.
Yeah.
That is, if you had to bet, that'd be an area to bet.
Well, that makes it makes a really easy connection for people, I think, because sports memorabilia, baseball cards, stuff out there. People like, I don't know, they can visualize that. That makes sense to them because it's been around for so long versus the monkey face token, NFT. People are like, what the hell is that? That doesn't make any sense. Right. Yeah. But sports stuff.
I just hope my baseball cards will. I have boxes of baseball cards from the 1990s.
Sure.
In my garage, and I was about to dump them. I just resisted.
Yeah.
A few years ago, and I'm glad I did. I just hope they will rise in value one of these days.
I think it was a guy kind of, I'll say roughly in your neighborhood, but I think it was either New Jersey or New York. He just sold his Mickey Mantle card for like $12.5 million or something like that. Literally just in the last couple of weeks. And I think I quickly read the story. And if I recall, I think he bought it in the mid 90s. I want to say 94 or something like that for $50,000. So this guy's held on to it for like 30 years almost. And $12.5 million is what he gets for it.
Him.
Yeah,
Good
no kidding. Him. So Jim, you never know what kind of gold mine you got sitting in your garage.
Fingers
crossed. Yes. All right. Well, let's get back into it.
Play ball.
So again, you've been around and you've been working with entrepreneurs, innovation for so long. What do you see as future trends in that area, whether it be in technology or in innovation specifically? Do you see any trends? You see stuff like, hey, this is what's coming up over the horizon that is really exciting?
Well, I think clearly AI, artificial intelligence, right? I mean, there's a few areas: artificial intelligence, automation, right? Those areas are in the background, are getting more traction. Then you have AR, VR, augmented reality, virtual reality. Those are clearly ones in entertainment space as we see Meta, and that will get some traction at some point. Robotics, clearly, there's a lot of traction in robotics as these shortages in labor persist, those will gain traction. So those are a few areas in technology, right? And then when we think about innovation in general, one of the areas that has gotten so much funding recently and is so important to us as we deal with a warming planet is the climate tech. So I'm excited about those possibilities, right? That will help us, weather this changing climate that's caused so much distress and so much pain and suffering around the world, so that's where I'm hopeful that innovation and tech will sort of help us considerably.
Yeah.
So those are a few areas.
Good. I am kind of curious, I've mentioned, I'm like, wow, you've had all of these years in working with startups and working with the Tech Council and leading venture funds around that as well. Can you share of any great examples of companies that you've started with and helped guide, and just some of the fun stuff, interesting things that they've kind of kicked off and launched?
Yeah, sure. Let me. I have to think about it for a sec, but I'll just think about. I'll mention one interesting company I'm working with right now, which is actually two, which relate to health and health technology, which is so important these days. One is a sort of a vagus nerve stimulator, right? The vagus nerve is an important nerve in your body. And if you stimulate it with slight electrical pulses, it can relax you and calm you down and really help you different. And there's different applications for possibly Alzheimer's, PTSD, depression, things like that, even autism possibilities. So there's really interesting possibilities with those types of applications. So that's still, gaining traction and coming out in the market soon. Another one that's similar is it deals with your watch, your Apple Watch, which will help you track how anxious you get, right? Because mental health is a huge issue these days. And if you could track what's getting you upset and what's making you anxious, then you can do things to help ease your anxiety. And just by wearing an Apple Watch or another type of device, you can track these things now. And so the promise, I think, those two are just two examples of technology helping us be more healthy, is really extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I think there's big promise ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I love that whole wearable industry around utilizing technology to monitor and provide guidance around health and health maintenance. I think that's a huge opportunity. There's so many different applications, I think, that you could go along with that. I love the idea about the anxiety component of that. Yeah, that'll be fun to see that come out. I don't wear an Apple Watch, but I'm still the old-fashioned analog guy. But
I'm the same way, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, listen, I know you have a podcast. You've been involved in a number of books as well. Your podcast is A Few Things Show with Jim Barrood. A great title. What do you do on your podcast? What's it about?
It's similar to you, Randy. I interview folks from entrepreneurs to innovators to investors and authors, all talking about, insights from sort of the innovation ecosystem, which is sort of the area which I play in, or the field.
There you go. Throwing the baseball. There you go. You jumped right in.
Yeah. So I'd say it's mostly, again, around those themes of entrepreneurship and innovation, but we bring in timely topics, including mental health. Right? Just had one on breathing. Actually, we just had one on breathing. How through your breathing, you can really improve your health, and you can really, benefit from just paying attention to how you breathe. Right. And different exercises. And there's actually one which had a really cool session. If you go by, you should check it out.
Yeah. I love that about the breathing. I've studied, it's probably a much deeper term than what I should really give it, but I've read a little bit. How about that? About breathing and breathing exercises to help reduce either stress and anxiety and or just help you focus your mind a bit on and relax even. So there's sometimes at night where I do this, and there's a name for it, and it completely slips my mind about breathing, which is you kind of do this deep breath, and then you kind of, once you're at the point where you think you've got enough in there, like you do again a couple of times, and it likens to like maybe a dog panting, right? You do that quick inhales with that when you've kind of already gulped in a big deep, and then slowly exhale that out. And if you do that like twice even, it really begins just to shut everything down, it seems like, to relax. And I swear I could do that. I could be laying there and going like, I got a lot of stuff going on in my mind. I'll do that exercise twice, and within 2 minutes, I'm asleep. I swear, if it's even that. It just like, and maybe it's psychological, I don't know, thinking this is going to work, but I don't know. It's great. There is a name for it. I can't remember what that particular method is, but well, that's very fun. So I'm going to go check out. You've got a show on your podcast about breathing.
Yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
it just released.
I'm going to dab into that one. So we talked a little bit about the pandemic. I'm kind of curious because you've worked with so many different folks across, the world in dealing with the pandemic. What, in your experience, how did the pandemic impact startup activity? Of course, we know, people were isolated and made it a bit more difficult, in connecting. Are there other, I guess, could be positive or negative impacts that the pandemic had? Sure.
Well, initially we thought the world was coming to an end. Right?
Oh, yes.
Well, it was in some ways, but that startups would get hurt. Really, the whole economy, right? The whole startup ecosystem would get slammed, right? Because of low demand and no investing, because everyone's scared. But after a month or two, or a few months. Any crisis stimulates innovation and startups, right? Any recession, depression. Historically, when people lose a job, are in distress, they have no choice but to default to entrepreneurship. So that was the silver lining, right? There were so many people that had to do something and had to do it online, right? In many ways. And that progressed to being a sort of a rise in entrepreneurship, where people may have lost a job and were doing it, or they were doing a side hustle, right? Or they were doing something they always wanted to do, right? And just didn't have the time, but now they had time. And so it was just sort of a perfect storm. And so we see a rise in entrepreneurship and side hustles from all ages, and a rise in leveraging digital capacity, which we discussed earlier,
right,
which provided really cheap and great opportunities to do things. And so that's been the number one thing, at least a positive, right? That has really helped. And there's going to be a bunch of innovations that come through this period that we haven't seen yet because of all that activity, right? Some of the best, the Airbnb of the world, and was 2008 recession, and Uber as well, right? So you're going to see more of those in the years to come. So that's really exciting. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, investors, we thought that, the money did dry up right away at first, right? Because there was fear. But then Zoom opened up the possibilities of people investing anywhere.
Right.
All of a sudden, investors who wouldn't go outside their ballpark or their area to invest would go around the world and just sign a contract using Zoom.
Yeah. Get
to know an entrepreneur using Zoom, right? So that unleashed all this pent up money, right? Which was being spent on, things because there wasn't anything to spend it on. There's more money in the system, all the quantitative easing, all the money from the Fed, right? Cheap money. So you had all this money out there, had to go somewhere.
Right.
And so it really opened up the possibilities of more investing, as long as you still had a good idea and could present it over Zoom, right? One of the skills that entrepreneurs need to do really well, you can get funding. So that's really changed things forever, right? So there will be more money than ever before going forward for startups. Do you still have to have a good idea? Yeah. Do you still have to have a good team? Yeah. But the possibilities of getting money from halfway across the world are much more possible than they were just 3 years ago.
Yeah.
That changed the game, right? And so then, of course, as we mentioned before, the possibilities of working anywhere. It's just so amazing. So therefore, it's an option for people who want to travel the world.
Right.
And what do you want to do after the pandemic? You want to travel the world. So there's another reason why there's going to be more people either working remotely and or being an entrepreneur, traveling and running their business if possible.
Yeah.
There have been some serious silver linings to a dreadful pandemic.
I tend to agree with you on that. And I have a somewhat of a theory that's half-baked. I'm curious. I'd love your insight on it. Is that, we look at and we hear, across the world, there's labor shortage and, how difficult it is in our own country here with labor shortage and how businesses are having a difficult time in hiring. You mentioned and just went through a great explanation. I think during the pandemic, it really provided an opportunity for a lot of people to kind of begin to pursue a freelancing career, their side hustle, pursue it full time, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, because of the low barrier of entry on a number of incredible things that people could be doing, I think that people started pursuing that and took themselves voluntarily out of the job market and said, I want to pursue this other thing that I enjoy, that I'm passionate about, that I see the great opportunity. Now, some will succeed, some may not, but I think, this is my theory, I think we have this labor shortage because it's not necessarily people stopped working. I have a hard time believing. I think people innately want to be industrious. They want to do stuff. I think that's just human nature. But I think what they've done is that they've gone a different direction. It's not the same typical that we've seen since the industrial age, right? Of people going to work and going and producing something in a factory or at an office or something, but they're doing their own thing, and then maybe they might be doing remote work. They might be traveling and doing that nomad thing, but they're producing something that they control, call it freelance, call it side hustle, call it small business, whatever that may be. But I think that's where some of that missing gap of employment has gone. People have voluntarily, they're pursuing that. They don't get counted in the roles as being employed. They just have removed themselves off of payrolls and are now small business, or not even small business. It could just be sole proprietors just doing their thing. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you're absolutely right. These numbers undercount a lot, right?
Yeah.
A lot of undercounting, right? And I think, there's a lot of these new reports that just came out. So it's not only that, but apparently 4 million people have been taken out of the workforce because of COVID, long COVID or illness or death, whatever. So 4 million is a big number.
Yes.
It's a big number. So that's, if you think about that, that's why we're having a labor shortage, all those contributing factors. And then then just the post-pandemic PTSD from this pandemic, think about everyone who's in pain, suffering mental health, taking care of kids, taking care of parents. It's been really, really, really difficult, unless we know someone or have ourselves been involved or related to someone who's gone through it. It's easy to be oblivious to it. Right. And I count myself. I mean, I have some sense just because I talk about it. I talk to a lot of people, but I have some sense of it, but I could easily just be oblivious to it because we've gotten through, even though I had several aunts who passed, but there's so many other really horrific stories about pain and suffering that we don't hear about, and that are outside our bubbles, right? Which have gotten sort of thicker, right? Unfortunately, due to this pandemic, right? It's harder for us to reach out to new people and understand people's pain. So,
hopefully, I am hopeful. I'm an optimist, I guess, that, we'll eventually kind of get over all of the litter, if you would, of the pandemic that is out there. I was just reading actually today, just an article about the incredible learning loss that occurred with our students here in our country, and that essentially they lost about a decade or more of learning during the course of the pandemic because of remote learning, schools closed, whatever reason you want to label it with. But, that's like, that decade, that generation is going to be paying for that for a long time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, that was one of my recent, I don't want to promote, but I had a recent podcast on someone who wrote a book about the stolen year. About this basic fact that so many kids lost learning, and that's going to take a big effort to bring them back up to stuff.
Yes.
So, and the positive thing, I think some of the things I read, again, hopefully these are true. There's a good chance. Well, things are looking promising that we won't have a bad surge in the fall. At this point, we don't know about a variant, but so there's a glimmer, a pretty big glimmer of hope that I'm counting on, frankly, to put us in a better spot.
Well, I agree. Yes, and I have that same hope as well. All right, so here we are, Jim. We're coming down. We're at the bottom of the ninth. All right, and this is where I get to ask all of our guests, really, what advice do you have for rookies in the game? So those that are starting out in business for themselves, or maybe those who already have a business and are looking for some guidance. What kind of great tips do you have?
Sure. Well, number one, have an open mind, continue learning, whatever your focus is, continue learning, educating yourself. There's so much free advice out there and free learning. You could be an expert in anything, but particularly as it relates to your venture, try to become as knowledgeable and open-minded as possible. Learn from different folks. The other thing is to build your network, your personal advisory board or mentor board or anything. You should have a group of folks that you can have several of these groups or boards, one for your business, one for your life, just to continually get guidance from others, because that will help you immeasurably. You need those types of smart people in your life to help you with your business and your life. As simple as that, because I think we learned that more than anything else through this pandemic. If we had friends and close friends, that was really helpful. And it's helpful, it shows for life longevity, right? If you have friends and mentors and a smaller group. So that's important. Those two things are important, obviously. And then to sort of network, at the end of the day, you need to build your network. And that means online you can do it, but also starting soon in person.
Right.
And as you network, you can that will help you raise money, get talent, and keep that talent, right? At the end of the day for your business going forward. So those three things I think are just things to really remember, right? Open mind, personal advisory boards, and then build your network. Those are distinguishing things that will help you survive and thrive in the future.
Yes. I love that. Survive and thrive. Well, that's great advice on all of those points. And I'm sure that our audience will take that to heart. And if they need some more encouragement along those lines, they can check you out on innovationplus.us. Go listen to the what is it? The Few Things show with Jim Barrood. I like that. The few things, a few things. There's just a few things. The podcast. We'll have all of those links down in the show notes, so you guys can go check all of those out. And
happy to connect on LinkedIn. And I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. I'm happy to help you in any way, shape, or form. My career has been helping others, and I look forward to continuing to do that with your audience, Randy. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. Thanks for joining us. We absolutely appreciate it. And it's been a real pleasure getting to know you a little bit, Jim. Thank you.
Likewise.
All right. Okay, folks, that's the ball game. So thanks for joining us today. And if you liked our show, please tell your friends, subscribe, and review. And we'll see you around the ballpark.
Running the Bases with Small Businesses is brought to you by 38 Digital Market, a digital marketing agency committed to client growth with lead generation, higher conversions, and increased sales. Connect with us today at 38digitalmarket.com.
Yeah. Hey, there you go.